Good evening, everyone. I'm Shoma Chaudhury. I'm one of the co-founders and director of Algebra. One of our colleagues, Payal, is missing today. Usually she does the welcoming. But we're all here in spirit, and they're the other women of Algebra that join me in welcoming all of you here today. There's Nina, of course, and Ritu, Shuli, Rimjim, and Payal, and Anjali, and of course me, who are all here to welcome you on this weekday. Thank you for sharing your time with us. Many of you knew, so there are others in the audience, and there are friends who often wring my neck for explaining what Algebra is, but there are many of you who are new today. So, just in a line, many people ask, why is this called Algebra? It has a beautiful meaning. It's the word al-jabr in Arabic, and it means the science of restoration and balance. And we also have an emblem of the dragonfly, which is really the power of emotional and mental transformation, of transforming the world and yourself. And the reason I emphasize that today is because all three speakers really use that tool to transform the world and themselves. But first up, before we plunge into the evening, there is, of course, HCL, who we would really like to thank for enabling us to bring Algebra to you in Chennai, and ITC Grand Chola for being our partners and being more than just a venue partner, but a great hospitality partner and a co-traveler in this journey. And of course, Glenlivet and Pepsi have been our partners right from the beginning over the last 2 years and keep us always in high spirits and good spirits and in liquid spirits to enjoy what we hope is otherwise intellectual provocation. First up today is a conversation that I'm very, very excited to have, because part of Algebra's endeavor was really not just to bring people of excellence, ideas of excellence here, but to be able to show the nuts and bolts and the price of excellence, because that then resonates with all our lives and there's a takeaway for all of us. Shujaat Khan today is widely acclaimed as one of the greatest sitarists of his time. He is the seventh in seven generations of sitar players, the son of the legendary Vilayat Khan, and his grandfather, his great-grandfather, they've all been legendary sitar players. His great-grandfather, Imdadkhani, in fact, is the gharana that his lineage now is named after, for bringing the Gayaki Ang, or bringing the quality of the Gayaki Ang into playing the sitar. But for all of that, if music is divinity, then there is a price to be paid for divinity. And Shujaat Khan's life and his expertise and his excellence and his gift is really almost like an epic poem, because he has paid a huge price for that privilege of being part of this lineage. And he's often, in the beginning, was considered just Vilayat Khan's son. There was a great struggle for him to really find his own identity, his own voice on the sitar. Today he has achieved that, and we celebrate it and we revel in it. But we forget the hard journey it takes to arrive at that. And so today it will be a real privilege to hear about both the blessing as well as the burden of coming from the lineage that he does and of a life lived in the service of the sitar. There's a beautiful phrase that Shujaat has used earlier, speaking of his life, when he said that people often ask him about his relationship with the sitar. And he says that when I'm playing, the bead of sweat that runs down my face and that falls onto the floor and catches the light and shines is really my gift. That is what my life is about, that bead of sweat, and what it takes for that bead of sweat to fall down and create the magic that we all revel in. Shujaat has, of course, won many awards. He was also nominated for the Grammy for an album that he did called The Rain. He's collaborated with Iranian artists, with bringing folk, for singing along with playing the classical sitar. There are many milestones that he's created, and I look forward to sharing all of that with you. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Shujaat Khan. Thank you, Shujaat. We did try to make Shujaat bring his sitar as well, but we are actually as interested in hearing about the story of his relationship with the sitar than only hearing the sitar. So thank you, Shujaat.
Thank you.
As I said, Shujaat, we are always celebrating the final product and the beauty that you bring to us. But it has been both a great blessing as well as a burden to come from the lineage that you do. So before we start unpacking that story, I wanted to ask you today, where you are, when you look back on that whole journey, and you were to describe your relationship with the sitar, what would it be? In what terms would you describe it?
Shomaji, we are today here in Chennai, and this is a place which is steeped in culture. There is just so much culture, so much music, art, everything all around. Everyone here, I'm sure, knows of people or are friends with lots of artists who they must be
Can all of you hear him at the back?
Yeah. And I'm sure they're all aware of everything that goes into making an artist. Very often, when I start talking about my struggles or about being Vilayat Khan's son, it seems as if I'm looking for people to feel bad for me or feel sad for me or oh, poor thing. And the truth is, you're absolutely right. It's very bittersweet. There is one part where being the son of such a person, being born into this family, to have music around us since the day we are born, everything, we have a foot in the door as we start growing up, and people, that is also good. But also, even today, not so much, but because I have got old myself, but even today, the comparisons that people have when they talk about me or listen to me with people who have heard my father and other great maestros is always the expectations keep growing every day, and that is a part of it which is a little scary, but all in all, it's been a wonderful ride. It's been difficult in parts, but it's okay.
So we'll come to the difficulty. I didn't want you to be thrown into the deep pool immediately. And I think we should put it on record that this is absolutely not a seeking of sympathy vote, but really to understand the journey that goes into making excellence. You know, and in many ways, like I said, it's like an epic poem because it's common to many people. It's not individually your story. In many ways, that is the story of struggle for many artists, you know, so it's important to hear that. But I'll bring you to that later. I was asking about your relationship with the sitar, you know. People say that you play it almost like it's a part of your body, you know. Do you feel that now? What is the sitar for you?
Yes, again, I always shirk away from glorifying anything that a musician does. We were born, even before we are born, the expectations that I will be a sitarist is already established. My mother used to be forced to go to music concerts, even when she was expecting, 6, 7, 8 months. Really, no, you have to go because there is a son there, who is already listening to music and is going to be a musician, so you have to go. So that kind of, so she was sitting there. I remember there were times when she was, there were some photographs I've seen. She's sitting there, 8 months pregnant, with all these bolsters around her, just not really enjoying the evening very much. But my father and everyone was convinced that there is a son who is already listening to music. Well, I think there must be some benefit there. I understand. Then, when I'm 2.5 years old, I'm of course listening to music all the time, Shoma. I mean, you can imagine. It's like sportsmen, when you go to a sportsman, you see cricketers, you see bats and pads and balls lying around and people only talking about it. The same thing here. My father is there and his students are there and the conversations and musicians coming in and out of the house. So we're already listening to music. At 2.5, I have a small sitar that is given to me. That's my first sitar. And that is put with the toys. So it's just there. And maybe by 3, I start imitating the students who are playing by trying and picking it up and trying to play this way. And my father tells me, no, this is how you sit, this is how you do this. So at 6, when I was 6, I was already ready for here in Bombay at the Jahangir Art Gallery, I was already playing my first concert. It was a 40-minute concert where I played an alap and a jod. And so yeah, it is. And but the truth is that this the kudos and this belongs to Ustad Vilayat Khan, or my teacher, how they would actually see that a child gets involved in music. At that time, for us, we had no idea. So the involvement with the sitar, anyone who has spent all his life, 50, 55 years of his life, playing an instrument, holding it every day, traveling with it, living with it, should be comfortable with it. For me, it is exactly like it is an extension of who I am, and my body and my mind and my heart. And that should be. If it's not, that would be surprising. Yeah.
So, you know, a big part of your journey, Shujaat, ended up being looking for that space of individuality, of an identity for yourself. And it's interesting because then it becomes dual-pronged, because one is every musician's search for individuality within the tradition and, you know, with what has gone before. And for you, there was a second layer to that, which was to seek your own identity separate from being Vilayat Khan Saab's son. And it's interesting that where you grew up, which is that you were in Shimla for most of your childhood, ended up becoming a srot for that, you know, the folk songs of that. Would you talk about it and how it affected you and changed your music?
You're absolutely right. Being the son of such a great legend, there could be people here who have parents who are huge in their field, and then you step into the same field. You're really asking for trouble, really. Anyone can understand, because it's a whole life of grief. You're putting yourself out there and understanding that this is how it's going to be. So that was one. To be doing the sitar again, to come to terms with the fact that all my life I will be called or expected to play the way Ustad Vilayat Khan Sahab plays. So it took time for me to get across to the people that I am his son, I have his blood, I have his genes, I have his touch, but I'm still Shujaat Khan. And people found it very difficult to understand that. So when I was maybe 17, 18, I left the country. I was traveling abroad a lot and going all over the world, earning money different ways, because I was getting a little disillusioned by the fact that people were not accepting me. I know I'm Vilayat Khan's son. I know I'm a part of a great lineage. I know, but I listen to what I have to do also, and what I have to say, my own personality in my music. That took a little time to establish. But I'm fortunate. I'm one of the fortunate people who were able to overcome that. Very often you will hear of great legends, their children, they usually end up like either alcoholics or in rehab for some kind of addiction or the other. And I can understand, because there is so much pressure, that you constantly have to go through. So there was a part of it, but I enjoy it. I enjoy waiting for things to happen. I'm not in a rush that everything needs to be done now, happen now. It's okay. But I like also to swim against the tide, that this is the system. I'm not a herd person. Never. I've never been. And sometimes I've been misunderstood by my elders. Why don't you do this? This is a part of tradition. This is how you should be. But I've always walked my own path. And it's not being rebellious without any thought process. It's just saying, this is who I want to be. I'm a part of this tradition. I enjoy this, and I enjoy being, I think it's a great honor and privilege that I'm a part of this great heritage. But I also want to be myself. So people could not understand that music is not the be-all and end-all of my existence. I have other things, like if I'm growing up in the mountains, I like to listen to folk music. I like to see the changing of seasons. I like to hear the sounds of the breeze or the brooks or the streams, and I like to incorporate that in my music. And one day, the people will be able to hear it and hopefully come back to listen to me.
So in fact, Shujaat, that is what I was asking. Maybe if you could share with us some of these songs of your childhood, because later you married it in a very innovative way to bring folk and classical together. But before you even do us a rendition of maybe what you finally amalgamated it into, can you sing us a few strains of the songs of Himachal that you grew up with, you know, the folk songs?
Please forgive me, I'm not a singer, so I play the sitar with great difficulty.
And you sing beautifully without caveats.
It's just, I've been working on this recordings of some folk from different parts of India, and I was listening to some old, very old, this is a very old lullaby. It goes maybe 100 years old, but from generation to generation. So I was listening to it, just a few lines. आजा रे निंदिया क्यों ना जा, आजा रे निंदिया क्यों ना जा, मेरे बाबा को सुला क्यों ना जा. सपनों के गांव में लेके चलूं, लेके चलूं, तारों की छाँव में लेके चलूं, लेके चलूं, आजा रे निंदिया क्यों ना जा, मेरे बाबा को सुला क्यों ना जा. This is an old. Shukriya. See, that's why I keep telling all my friends at Algebra, musicians से सिर्फ सितार वितार सुनो, ये सब बातें पीछे मत सुनो, it's just useless. But it's okay.
But you sing to share words, so we are happy to hear the other words as well. So again, just to give the audience a sense of your life, Shujaat, because, you know, again, like I'm saying, when we celebrate the music, it's come out of a cauldron of experiences. So if I ask you to look back, you know, you were living in Shimla in a 28-bedroom house, I believe. You had 3 rooms to yourself. There were 4 Rolls Royces or Mercedes or BMWs. And yet you remember that, you know, with mixed feelings, with ambivalent feelings. So again, when you look back at that, you had no radio, you had no TV, you had no newspapers. There was just music, school, and you, and your father's presence or absence. Do you think that that is the smithy out of which this kind of perfection of music comes out of? Only out of that kind of agony does such music come? Or do you think an easier childhood would still lead to great excellence?
Have any of you heard of any great musician who was the son of a king? Have you? It doesn't happen. It's not possible. If you have comfort, if you have everything around you, to vie for or to push your body and to push your mind for something is nearly impossible. I grew up, yes, she's very right. Have you all read comic books? Richie Rich? Poor little rich guy. Again, I'm not soliciting any kind of emotional unhappiness. I'm not trying to get across to you, but it was a little bit like this. Beautiful home in a beautiful place. My father was, you know, plethora of staff, beautiful cars, people coming in and out of the home. Lovely, lovely place. But it was a time when I was just going to school, doing some sports. It doesn't look like it, but really I was. And then coming home. Think about this. All of you probably have children. If you ask your 9 or 10-year-old child, you get up in the morning, go to school, do sports, come back, sleep 3 hours, and then start practicing at night at 10 o'clock and practice till 5 in the morning, then sleep 3 hours and go back to school. they'll call the police. Yeah, because so it was a time, that's, I think, one of the reasons my father moved there, so we could be away from the city, away from all the trappings of TV or radio or movie theaters or whatever. It was just out there. But, so there was that part of it, which was beautiful, and I was but my father was going through a very different time at that. He got involved in alcohol in a big way, traveled out of the country a lot at that time. He was establishing himself. There were issues with my parents. So in this beautiful home, I was 9 or 8 or 9 years old. And every night, and when my father was home, every night they were fighting, there was unhappiness, there was this fear. And I was actually practicing out of this fear of having to hear my parents arguing or fighting or anything unhappy, something I can keep out of the room and get there and just practice, which I'm not hoping of any other person, but these are things that make our life. And so there was this estrangement between everyone in the family. We were just different people who were just sitting and doing their stuff. So I realized very, very early on that I had to get away from this, maybe even when I was 10 or 11, that this was not going to working out for me. I don't like tension. Even today, I'm very relaxed. I don't like any drama, theater. Just everyone be happy. Just chill. No. So this was really difficult for me. But again, this creates this atmosphere for me at that time that the only way out of this or to get away into something is to practice. And so I become my own human being, and I'm not dependent on my father or whatever else. So to leave a place when I was 17, I was senior Cambridge at that time, finished school, and I decided to leave home. And that was a big thing. In India, everyone would talk about this, like, such a great artist, and leaving home. It was a big scandal. And I was treated very badly because of that. All the people thought I was a bad person. I was not respectful. I didn't care about such a great artist, but that's not true. I cared about him, but I also cared about myself. And I just wanted to get away from this drama and theater that constantly surrounded such a great man. I mean, his music was great, but again, he did the same thing. I came to Chennai today. I flew in myself. I travel alone. I don't have students surrounding me. I don't have managers. I don't have assistants to carry my bags. I come and I check in and I go to my room. Because I like that independence of being a normal human being. And artists don't, as you will see around you, they can't seem to get enough of this people surrounding them and their sycophants and, just, as we say, managers and helpers. And so I wanted to get away from that thing. And this was nothing to be modern, but just to see that if I could be a normal human being and also be a good enough musician. And so when I was traveling, it was not only out of the country. I was traveling through Punjab, I was traveling through Bengal, I was traveling through Rajasthan, listening to folk music, not only at going to a 5-star hotel, but actually going to the villages and spending time with them and listening to these old traditions, which I started incorporating in my music. That's why today you all are here, whoever, who come to, let's say, my concerts, at least they do know that I am Vilayat Khan Saab's son, but I hope that at some corner of their mind they realize that Shujaat has a certain voice, or his music has a certain quality, and his strings have a certain touch, which is his own. And I think that was what I was pursuing most of the time.
So again, we'll come back to the strand in your life, because it was such a huge strand in your life, and for us to understand it better. But when you moved away to America, you played in a Spanish restaurant. And so if you hadn't been a sitarist, if your father hadn't set that framework for you in your mother's womb, would you have played some other instrument? Have you ever been drawn to play anything else? Because at the restaurant, you weren't playing the sitar. So you were not seduced away from the sitar at any point?
No. I enjoyed the sitar was something which I was it was obvious to me. It's a beautiful instrument. Every instrument is beautiful, but something that you're doing for years together become even more special. So sitar was always special to me. So also, I knew that if I did something else, I would be mediocre. And mediocrity, I'm not ready to embrace or even accept. In fact, I keep telling all my students, I tell all my friends, I said, if you can somehow make a good with mediocrity, it's a beautiful thing. It's only people who are pushing themselves to get better, they have a problem. So it's true, you know. If everyone was just happy with mediocrity, it would be a lovely world. Everyone would just, you know, just perfect. Everything's fine. It's only when you start pushing yourself, then the problems come up. I have to be better. I need to, well, if I'm playing this is okay. What's the problem? I mean, if I can somehow, arey, 1 lakh rupees aa jaye per month, I'll be fine. 1 flat, 1 car, it's fine. Or this is how I understand that. If you can, if it makes you happy, and if it's so, there are so many people, then there are people who push themselves. And I think the sitar, and as you said, but my work at this restaurant in uptown New York, it was only the very rich white people who used to live there. So there was these Spanish restaurants that had just started coming up. This is late 70s. So I got a job at a Spanish restaurant and to play the guitar and sing. और मैं तो सब हिंदी गाना गाता था, जो भी whatever I'd heard. I was just singing there, and all the white people thought I was singing some kind of Spanish song. So, of course, every now and then I just, and the guitar is not difficult to play, and I'd throw in oh yeah, or something like that. And the guy at the door was warned that as soon as some person walked in who was actually a Spanish-speaking person, then he'd look at me, then I used to go for my break. So when I went for my break, well, the break was, then you had to wash dishes. So it was okay. And of course, once it did happen that the guy at the door missed recognizing a person. And these people came and sat down, and I was singing some kind of Hindi stuff. Tu mere gharana, main tere gharana, sab kuch. And these people were looking at me, and I was doing this whole Spanish thing. So then they came up to me and shook my hands and said, you know, where is this dialect from? What are you singing? I said, this is Spanish. They said, no, but we speak Spanish. I said, no, this is from southern Spain or something. So it was a good time. It was it was good.
So, Shujaat, before we move away to Amir Khusru and to Kabir and, you know, the poets who really move you, sing us a Spanish Hindi song that you were playing that song. 5 strains of Tumana Hamana.
सब भूल गया. I used to,
because you did kind of play in Bollywood and sing in Bollywood for a while, so I'm sure there's some you remember.
I was just singing anything. In fact, I remember very well the song that I was singing when I got stuck. Imagine, I've got a guitar. Na tum hame jano. It sounds kind of Spanish, right? You know, you could. Na hum tum jane, na tum hame jano, magar lagta hai kuch aisa, mera humdam mil gaya, na hum tum jane. So I thought that sounded Spanish enough. So it was something.
And you threw a hole into that.
Every now and then there was something like, yeah, paella, whatever. Yeah.
So, you know, as I said before, we come to Khusru and to Kabir and others. We've spoken about some of the privations of coming from this family and this legacy, but would you help us understand what your ancestors did with this instrument? You know, if you just went from one generation to the other, what was it that they were bringing that was so distinctive to the sitar? And if you can help articulate what each of them did and why was it different from the one that went before, and how are you different from all of them?
I'll try, Shoma. This is the problem I have. I'm better just playing the sitar, but anyway, I'll try. I'll give you. I'm from a very beautiful and a very rich lineage, and I have spent my whole life understanding how ordinary I am. I'm not a genius, and it's been a huge struggle. I have a huge destiny that's sitting on my shoulder, and I'm trying to live that destiny with as much grace and charm and dignity as possible. I'll give you an example of, people talk about their lineage, but I don't want to hide behind the greatness of my lineage. I don't hold that as a sword. I am 7 generations. That doesn't matter. Yeah, it is very nice. The other day I was giving an interview, and there was a great tabla maestro who was giving it. We were together. So someone asked me, how many generations of musicians are? So I said 7, which is what I've heard. I'm 7th. So they asked him, he said, and how many generations of musicians are you from? So he thought about 33. बोला जा रहा है छाट से 33 मारो ठा 33 generations पहले तबला didn't exist. Hey, क्या बात कर रहे हैं 33. I said कुछ नाम वाम याद है? अरे हाँ राम श्याम हरे अनिल हरे जय रवि जय. There are so many people who spend a lifetime impressing you or impressing upon you or scaring you with the power and the depth and the greatness of their lineage. I enjoy, the interesting thing about it, lots of times people say 7 generations, and I say, Bhai, forget about 7, let's go with 4. They say, why? I say, I am probably the only musical family in this country that have 4 generations of commercially recorded music. So it's a big honor. It's my great-grandfather, Imdadkhani, 78 RPM records, not 1, but 5 or 6, which at that time, even if you had 1, it was more than a big deal. Then my grandfather, Imdadkhani, then my father and me. So at least I have proof that I have 4 generations. 33 bolne mein, it sounds nice. But
Shujaat, I was asking you, I know it's really hard for you to do that without the instrument, but can you give us just an inkling of what is it? Like, how did they inflect the instrument in that way?
At one time, it was just what we call let me, if I have to get a little technical, the tantra kari ang, or the, let's say, this more spiritual thought of music. Everything was more plain, and right-hand strokes. My father introduced to the world of instrumental music and to sitar something called the gaiki ang, which is the vocal style of the, and what he does is following the vocality, following vocal compositions or following folk and trying to portray them on the sitar.
Shujaat, I'm going to cut you short because I can see he's ringing the bell and we haven't even got to the meat of your music.
And what does the bell mean? 5 minutes or 2 minutes? Which is?
It means exactly 5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So, I'm sorry to cut through this because like you said, it's technical and without the instrument, you won't be able to demonstrate it for us. But when you moved into really finding your own voice, you brought voice to the instrument as well. And you said that of all those you sing, the folk songs and everything, that Kabir and Amir Khusru are 2 poets that really, really move you,
True. Yes.
So little bit about why them, and then if you can please just sing a few strains from both of them.
Okay. How much time do we have? 5 minutes. The bell. This bell scares me, but we have to always stay with that. Now, Kabir and Amir Khusro impressed me because, one word, their simplicity. I have a very simple life. I like to live. I don't wear silks. I don't wear any clothes that have any kind of work on them. I don't wear colors. So the same way, and I've been influenced by these people because of their simplicity. And simple words, 2 lines of Kabir. पत्ता बोला वृक्ष से, पत्ता बोला वृक्ष से, सुनो वृक्ष वन राय, अब के पतझड़ ना मिले, दूर पड़ेंगे जाए। वृक्ष बोला पत्ते से, सुन पत्ते मेरे भाई, यही जगत की रीत है, एक आए एक जाए। For me, it's a very simple way to explain our existence and our thought and the passing on of everything, name, fame, position, power, how it rolls on. And these simple thoughts has always been very close to me. So, same thing with Amir Khusro, same thing with Kabir, but you know, all of you are aware of the great thoughts that these people have. So, I'm sure maybe you can Google and YouTube and pick up and listen to music all the time. But it's a good thing that we have this bell here, so we must all keep to a time so you can listen to everyone and have thoughts on that.
Thank you very much, Shujaat. You know, again, yes, time is short. As you said, everything moves on, but there was so much that one wants to hear from you, you know, about Lajo Lajo, the album that really shot you into everyone's consciousness, or at least popular consciousness. And if you can, would you like to just sing like a few bars from that? Any of that? I still have a minute on the clock.
Lajo Lajo, I think everyone's heard. Really, जिंदगी से बड़ी सजा ही नहीं, जिंदगी से बड़ी सजा ही नहीं, जिंदगी से बड़ी सजा ही नहीं, और क्या जुर्म है पता ही नहीं, और क्या जुर्म है पता ही नहीं, इतने हिस्सों में बट गया हूँ मैं, इतने हिस्सों में बट गया हूँ मैं, मेरे हिस्से में कुछ बचा ही नहीं, चाहे सोने के हाले में जड़ दो, हाला फ्रेम, चाहे सोने के हाले में जड़ दो, आईना झूठ बोलता ही नहीं,
Beautiful, thank you. I just wanted to share one little thing about Shujaat, which we didn't have time to talk about, but when he was talking about Vilayat Khan Sahib, he said he was like a pendulum, and I think nothing captures, you know, the story you've been telling us more than the fact that he was very compassionate to his students. Sometimes if a student was tired, he would go and make a pistachio milkshake for them and feed his students with his own hands. But he would drive Shujaat to play and play and play till his hands were bleeding and would still push him more. And Shujaat remembers one incident when his hands were bleeding and he was still being pushed to play. And then his father walked away, and when he went to look for his father to ask if he was playing all right now, he found his father crying, you know. So that was the difference of the personality that he had to live with. And when we were talking about breaking from tradition, the greatest salute, I suppose, Shujaat, apart from the fact that you created such a distinctive voice for yourself in the sitar, is that Shujaat has created absolute freedom for his children to find music in different ways and completely different from the lineage that he comes from. So in many ways, that is the greatest gift that your lineage taught you. So thank you very, very much, Shujaat. Thank you.